experience to share. Okay, so we started recording. We are good to go. Okay, so to start us off, I'd love to do a round of introductions around the room. And the question that so your name, what your role is with the community, and then this is a big question, so it might take might need to think about it for a couple minutes, but what is your biggest dream for your specific community's trees? That is the question. So pie in the sky, what's the one big dream you want to see happen? If anybody has it right now, you can start us off, and then when you finish your intro, if you could just popcorn it to somebody else, just say you're next. Then I don't have to keep assigning. Okay, who wants to go?
I could start.
Great.
So I'm Wendy Spector, and I've just started with some other folks in town a nonprofit that we're calling the Woodstock Village Conservancy. So that's Woodstock, Vermont. And the reason we started this effort is basically modeling after the Central Park or Emerald Necklace conservancies in those big cities, because our municipality doesn't have the financial or manpower resources to maintain what we have. And so we have this really lovely green that's now 200 years old, since it was first made into a green. And over that 2 centuries, hurricane, Dutch elm, lack of maintenance have basically decimated what was once a forest, almost like a little mini forest in the center of town. And now the benefit is that now we have all this open space where we can have events, but because it's not maintained, the park has gotten compacted and it's not in good shape. So big dream is like, and just to say also that we have, a downtown area where there are some trees that are struggling to survive and others that have been cut down over the years. So big dream is that we would plant trees in a very intentional way, following the Green Streets framework, putting trees along the business district, having more shade, more permeable surfaces, so that pedestrians can come in and, bicyclists can ride around safely, and we're less car focused. We're right at the, on Route 4, so the major mid-state corridor, east-west. So we have to deal with that fact. But ironically, we're the only place along Route 4 where there are actually 2 lanes going right around our green. So people like to zoom through after they get through the phalanx of tourists trying to cross in the downtown area. Anyway, so the big dream is replanting trees and then maintaining them mostly through philanthropy and grants. And then how about Gwen goes next?
Thanks. I was just taking notes. I'm Gwen Kozlowski, the Education Outreach Coordinator, and my big dream is to have stable funding. I'll pass it to Neil.
What town are you in, Gwen?
Oh, I live in Bolton, but my office is based in South Burlington.
I'm Neil Sillins. I'm the tree warden in Brandon, which is so far, takes up more time than I thought it would, but I'm making less progress as a tree warden than I thought I might. But I also have a non-tree warden dream, which is what I call my 50-year plan. Trees in Brandon got shifted to the sidelines with segment 6, which was the Route 7 improvement through downtown Brandon. A lot of trees were cut down. Some trees were planted in little tree boxes. And I have a fond memory. I'm from Chicago originally. I have a fond memory of the side streets in Chicago being lined with elms and reaching up to make a canopy overhead. I'd like the 50-year plan to start doing that, where we plant, 5 to 10 trees every year and have a constantly renewing canopy. And I think, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Warren.
Hi, everyone. Warren Spinner. I'm the tree warden for the city of Essex Junction, and I'm also on the tree committee. I guess my long-term dream for the city of Essex Junction would be to somehow have some sustainable funding to employ an arborist or full-time tree warden to help with all of the planning needs in the city. There is a lot happening. We're a small community, but there's a lot of development going on. And Nick Meyer, who is on this with me, is the chair of our tree committee, and we'll probably ask him to go next. But we are heavily involved with the city personnel. We are always called on with any tree issue at all. We're currently heavily involved with the tree planting grant that we got from UCF, which is going to be happening this spring. We're going to have a bid opening tomorrow to find out who the lucky contractor is that will be doing our planting. But we seem to be heavily involved with all tree related stuff, including planning and zoning, which is now come into play. So we're involved with them, and it's a great relationship. So I think for everyone that's tuned in here this morning, we have a great relationship with the city personnel, public works superintendent, right up through the city manager. Although I think that sometimes we're relied upon a little too much, because we're all in volunteer roles. But it just shows me that there is a need, especially in communities in Chittenden County, to take the next step to employ personnel on staff to assist in managing the trees. So at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Nick Meyer.
Essex Junction Tree Committee, and I echo much what Warren has said. A couple of things I might add to it would be long-term plans, as we have fostered these relationships with the municipality and kind of driven a number of changes, which also means a lot more work for us, which is okay. These are important goals to have. Maybe trying to get a little bit more support from the municipality. And especially as we look at our downtown area of the Five Corners, we've created some more changes to the code, the development code, but I don't feel we go far enough. And we're having this tremendous struggle in terms of the need for housing in the state, in our municipality, but also trying to create some sort of green streets program and developing infrastructure that we can use to make it a more walkable, habitable downtown area. And probably many of you know the Five Corners. It's a fairly intense area of development, and there's a lot happening there. And so my dream would be to say, let's have some setbacks. Let's try and take over some of the streetscape there to develop infrastructure for it. I think that's one of the issues we have. Warren and I are both in our 70s, and we're retired, so we love the work. We have the time to do the work of creating a framework to bring more youth into the tree committees, so we can have a great succession of leadership that's there. And I think that's what I struggle with a lot, and we try and reach out to the community events, doing Arbor Day events at the various schools, and we try and do tree walks and other things for education, and hoping to pull some people in who might be interested. I mean, we do have enough right now, and we've actually expanded our tree board because of interest. But again, most of them are in their 60s, 70s. So just looking for the future of what we can do. And final, I would like to see a little bit more help from maybe the community and some administrative things that we do in our tree committee. Yeah, that's it. And I will move on to Janice.
Oh, Janice, you're muted.
Hi, I'm in Virgins. We were pretty successful working with our town maintenance crew. My big hope is that that will continue in the future. We're a small area. We're somewhere between 1 and 2 square miles in size, and we've got trees that were planted a long time ago along our major corridors, Main Street and the older neighborhoods. I think the issue that I'm coming up against is trying to find places to put trees. I think the city was laid out and it's old enough at this point that there isn't a whole lot of green space, in particular between the road, the curbside, and the sidewalks. And the trees that have grown up in those places are so big now that they're heaving everything. So even though we have a good relationship with the city and the people that do the maintenance in the city, they're pretty hesitant to want to be planting more trees because of the heaving that happens down the road. Of course, these trees are like 100 years old, so most of us aren't even going to be around when it gets close to that time that starts to happen. But the other thing that's become apparent to me trying to locate places to plant trees is we had a natural gas pipeline come down through from Chittenden County, and they put their line in that same space that we would like to be putting trees at this point in time. And that line is only about 2.5 to 3 feet down in the ground. And the trees that we're using for the grant, which specifies what a 2 and a 2.5 inch caliper, require a bigger hole than what we can do because of these pipes. So in one of the neighborhoods, which we planted 19 trees in this past spring, we ended up having to go onto private property on the other side of the sidewalk into people's lawns. And for the most part, I did get good responses. I think I worry a little bit about who's going to maintain those trees in the future. So I'm not quite sure what's in store for them. We did do a good job of watering them over the summer with bags. But right now, I think we're going to be looking at taking down all the ash trees. That's probably what the rest of the money is going to go for. And with a few more trees that we can find spaces for around the community. So I guess as far as the big question here with the biggest dream is that I kind of echoed what some of you folks have already said, that there's nobody in the town that's really going to take this over. Once I'm done and once some of the other folks that are working on this project are done, I would love to see some other people step up and actually, if we could get funding just to maintain some of these trees, that would be huge. So that's kind of where Virgins is right now. And I'm not sure who else. Is Roland on? Roland or Doug?
I'm on. This is Roland. How are you?
Good.
I am the Cabot Tree Warden. I have a similar problem to what you just discussed, is a lack of people assisting, no tree committee. There are occasionally people that assist when we plant trees. The biggest problem I've had with trees is lawnmowers taking the bark off, especially with the zero turns now, and water with the flooding we've had in the last couple of years. We've been hit hard. That has incurred some problems with some of the trees. Aside from that, we're pretty well planted out, and I did a tree inventory, a municipal tree inventory with Joanne Garten last year. So everything is on the GIS format tree inventory, which will make the maintenance of what we have for trees a lot easier. And hopefully we'll be replacing trees only one at a time, two at a time as things die out like I've been doing. But die off seems to be occurring for various reasons, mostly water and damage to trees. And that can be dealt with working by myself. If we have more problems, it would be nice to have some assistance in the future, which I too don't see that coming. There's really nobody else stepping up to assist with things. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Doug.
Oh, he's saying, working on it. Audio connection isn't working. Okay, how about Larry?
All right, so I'm Larry Rogacki. I am coming from a different perspective and I'm listening more just to get ideas. I am in the town of Barry and I serve on the recreation board. The town of Barry has about a 350-acre town forest, and it's the responsibility of the recreation board for the management of that forest. The forest has 20 acres of bike trails, has a disc golf course, and has tons of access by the public. And as far as the town priority, it's one of those, don't worry about it. It'll just be there. So it's hard to get a plan together for the long-term interest of protecting the forest. We did update the management plan about a year ago, and there's two strong users of the forest. There's the people who like being in a forest for the value of the forest, and there's people who like the recreational opportunities that the town has provided, and sometimes those are in conflict. The town did a logging job about 4 or 5 years ago, and it did not go well. A lot of public resistance. So the management plan will call for some selective cutting in the future, but selling that is going to be very difficult. Now, and so I'm just curious. I'm here just to listen, to see what everybody's doing and to see if we can get some ideas. As far as the trees in the town of Barry, I know that we have documented emerald ash borer damage. The town has a plan to remove some ash trees, although quite honestly, it seems to me like that's as time allows. So it has not been very organized or very aggressively pursued. So I'm not much help on that aspect. And like I said, I'm really here just to listen and see if I can gain some ideas for how to get more involvement or more support for the town forest.
Great. Okay, I'll read. Doug is having a hard time with audio, so Doug's in Norwich, and he's vice chair of the EAB subcommittee, deputy tree warden for the town, and the dream is to have Norwich develop a tree plan. Total lack of preparation from the town for EAB has demonstrated the consequences of not having a plan. And then Jane, I think you're our Phil's also writing his notes in the chat, but Jane, you're our last speaker.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my video isn't working. So I'm in Waterbury. I'm the chair of the tree board. We now have a transition from tree committee to tree board. And we're just applied for Tree City USA, which we're excited about. I have a good group of on the tree board. Well, we do have one empty seat, and I'm kind of interested in getting a local arborist to join us because I feel like we could use another tree professional or a tree professional. I think that person is a little concerned about conflict of interest because he does work, has been bidding on jobs, he and his business partner, including, so we'll see where that goes. Big picture, the town has, the tree board has planted a lot of trees over the last 10 or 15 years, since we've been, I guess we've been together around 15. Now my tree board, I have some new members in the last 2 years, and it's been a turnover, and we're focusing on maintenance, and I feel like we've been a little remiss in that area, and trying to work more closely with the town, whose budget is not really adequate for the task, and they've increased their budget. Just met last week. They have $8,000 budgeted for this year, and we think we have EAB now, Emerald Ash Borer, on our main street. So $8,000. I now have 2 trees one that looks like it could be diseased. We haven't got a complete diagnosis yet, but probably should come down. And another tree that's got 2 trunks that could be cabled for $1,800. It's a green ash, but no, instead it looks like we could take it down for $4,000. Well, I guess $3,000 if the town hauls away and does the traffic control. So, we got we got a $8,000 budget, and I've got potentially $9,000 worth of tree work on two trees that have power lines and everything. So we're gonna get another estimate. I've also gotten an estimate for pruning trees, 48 trees that were planted by V-Trans when we had a Main Street reconstruction about 7 years ago. And autumn blaze and some elms in particular are very fast growing, and some oaks. So we want to be more proactive, and that's part of our plan to do structural pruning when trees are only 6, 8, 9 years old, to save trouble down the line. But I have a $3,200 estimate for that. So I think we have to make some hard decisions here. And there's 5 ash trees on our main street and 3 on some side streets, and there's 2 that are of interest. So I guess we need more money for maintenance, and I think next year we can also request that the town pay more. I feel like we could have a better relationship with the workers who work for Public Works, who go out and prune trees also. They've really botched a couple jobs, and there's some resistance there I've had a good relationship with the Public Works manager until this happened, and then he was very defensive. And, I think people are going out with some kind of chainsaw attachment on a pole saw or something, and really taking these huge cuts off these branches right to the trunk. And I was so upset about it. We reported one case, and I was so upset about it, I just let the other one just sit for a while because it was so bad. So I don't want to ruin my relationship with the Public Works director, but I'm going to have to get my act together and have a meeting with that person to address this issue. So there you go.
Yeah,
It's
thanks, Jane.
a little challenging being a chair of a tree board sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And to round us out, we've got Phil from Ludlow. He's setting up a tree committee, planning on doing ash inventory this summer. The select board has totally embraced the tree warden concept, and lots to learn moving forward. So I know, Gwen, you were taking notes. I was taking notes on some of the challenges that kind of came up in that introduction round. So I'm hearing recruitment of other volunteers, especially younger folks, lack of budget, lack of sustainable funding, lack of capacity of the town to participate in your activities, finding places to plant trees, hesitancy from the town, from others to get involved, and some maintenance stuff, flooding, more extreme weather. So lots of stuff that seems there are some similarities, even though we have such a wide breadth of communities and experience of your boards. So I would love to do, we're about halfway through this conversation. And so one thing I would love to hear, maybe just rapid fire, if you could try to keep your responses to like a minute, is more context about who within the municipality you've had the most success working with. So I know, Nick and Warren, you mentioned you've developed a relationship with your public works department. So, if you could just give us like a tidbit of like who you've had success, and like maybe like the one thing that's worked really well with that relationship, or how you've been able to build a strong relationship there. So if anybody has, and Nick and Warren, maybe we'll start off with you, and then if others have anything to share.
I think probably working directly with the Director of Public Works. And from there, since we are very hands-on, we've gotten to know his crew and have fostered relationships with them, and offered ourselves to be training and bringing a public works person along with us. So they've seen this now for 10 years, and especially to specific members of that. So I think they have a vested interest in what we're doing. So I think that's probably starting with Public Works. It was a little bit of a sell initially 10 years ago when we started the tree board to get the support of the trustees at that point. But since that time, they know that we're a working group, and they kind of let us go and give us the support with a budget to work with. So, Warren?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you said your volunteers work with the crews. Are your volunteers trained in tree care?
Well, some of us are trained, yes. Warren and I have both been pretty involved. Now, this could be in planting, it could be in small pruning jobs, but now Public Works is actually doing quite a few removals for us of ash in the neighborhoods. So I think that there are a number of us who came with skills to the tree board at the beginning. And so we were able to
probably worth noting that just Essex Junction is rare in that Warren, who's on this call, was the city arborist of Burlington for about 40 years. Yeah. So certainly has a skill set applicable to helping develop a program.
Yeah.
It's the relationship that we have has been great, because we're not moving right in and trying to take over. We're working with them. We understand the capabilities that they have and that they're interested and want to learn. And then what are the boundaries? I think we should talk about, what they're capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing. And they understand that. So for example, tree removal, we've worked with them. They've had a few boo-boos, but everything has worked out well. They know what trees they can take down and what trees they want to stay away from because of just things in the way. There's like permanent structures they don't want to hit, things like that. So most of their removal work is being able to knock the tree down right into the road and then clean it up, which has been good. It's saved the village a lot of money. When it comes to pruning, that's where Nick and I step in. They do very little of that. We will either go out and start training the trees ourselves, or we will contract it out. So that's worked well. So we know that things are getting done right. So working, it's been great. And Nick will agree, every time there's any tree question at all, it comes directly to us. And then we go back and we'll either look at it and guide them on what to do, no matter what it is. So it's been interesting. We had one issue where we had it's been hanging on for a couple of years, and that was a tree on Pearl Street, right across from where the fairgrounds is, that was dying, and it was like going to fall. And we were concerned it was going to fall in the public right away. And that's where I, as the tree warden, got involved and had to write a letter explaining what the issue was and send it to the property owner. And we asked Vermont League of City and Towns, what is our authority to go on the property and remove the tree if the property owner doesn't, because it could fall? Well, that was an interesting comeback from VLCT, saying that municipality cannot go on private property. We don't have the authority, based on that we have a policy and not an ordinance. So anyway, as a tree warden, I learned a lot from that little episode, which just barely happened. Which is another thing. We do have a tree policy, but now the planning department is thinking about incorporating that particular piece of a nuisance ordinance into an ordinance, so that we wouldn't have to worry, because we always work with property owners if we see a tree that's dead or dying or a hazard that could fall in the public right of way. And we've had great success. This was a tough one, but they finally took the tree down about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, which was happy to see, because we had to send a registered letter to them to make sure that they got it just for legal purposes. Yeah. But anyway, I got kind of sidetracked with that.
Yeah. Well,
we have a good relationship with the city, and it's working out well.
So a couple things that I kind of wrote down as like little kind of tips, taking from example from your experience in Essex Junction. One is identifying, I think Jane kind of referred to this when she was talking about what their dreams are, is identifying experts in your area that might be able to participate. So one link that you might be, if you've never looked, on the treesaregood.com website. So the International Society of Arboriculture keeps a database of arborists that are certified arborists, and you can actually search by location. So, Wendy, for example, I'm seeing a couple people listed in Woodstock. So maybe reaching out to those folks and asking if they have any capacity to volunteer, to participate, or to provide some training for your community or their community, if that's where they're based, might be a good idea to get that expertise and transfer that knowledge to your town staff. The other thing that Warren mentioned was VLCT. So this is the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Every municipality is insured by VLCT. You as a municipality, your municipality is a client of theirs, and they have this great resource called the Municipal Assistance Center, which is staffed primarily by attorneys. And so their job is really to answer questions from municipalities about anything, and you are a volunteer, you are not able to directly reach out to them. But if you are the appointed tree warden, or if you have a question and you have asked municipal staff to submit that to them, they will communicate with you and respond to you. They actually sometimes are not able to answer questions from us as a state program because we're not a client of theirs. So we do recommend that towns go directly to them. And then just the last thing, Warren, you mentioned the ordinance piece and your policy piece, and I think Jane mentioned that as well. Waterbury has adopted an ordinance. We are having another webinar next week that Joanne's leading around tree ordinances, and we just have updated our state tree ordinance guidance. So that would be another thing maybe you're interested in joining. So Jane, you have your hand up. I'm gonna go to you. And also just before I go to you, actually, let me just read what Doug and Phil put into the chat for Norwich. Only the issue of EAB has been the best success with the town manager, who needs and appreciates thorough communication, mixed success with the select board, and they have essentially no interest or support from the DPW director. And then Phil has met with the select board to get their buy-in and got it for the tree warden role, has met with Ludlow Streetscapes, which is probably another volunteer group, and has spent a day with the grounds manager in Ludlow to begin a good relationship. The town manager is 100% on board with the tree board and the role that they'll play. Great. All right, Jane.
I was just going to say, in my approaching this local resources guy who's an arborist, I'm also going to suggest that, he doesn't have to come to every meeting. If he could just be kind of a part-time, some of these, everybody's very busy, especially non-retirees. So that's another option, maybe just to see if you can get some help. That's just maybe not the full commitment of unloading everything on these people, but maybe get them to come to a few meetings as a resource. So, thanks.
Great. Does anybody else have, kind of going back to that question about specific relationships, tips for building good relationships with the municipal staff? Seeing in the chat, there was mention of town leadership, not public works. So kind of going a level up. Not yet heard positive around select board. So does anybody have like a select board that's been particularly supportive, or how have you kind of navigated working with your the legislative body of your municipality?
Nick, you want to take that one? We've actually had a good relationship with the select board over the past several years, but I'll let Nick speak to that.
Yeah, as I said earlier, forming the tree committee took a little bit of a lift to do it, but I think since feedback they get from Public Works in terms of lessening their load, I might say over the years we've increased their load because we planted about 350 trees around the community, but I think they really are starting to see a change on the streetscape and appreciate it. So they kind of let us run with things, and then we do at least an annual check in with the counselors and prepare a work statement for the previous year, and they just say go. So far it's been okay, and there's been a little bit of a budget crunch within the city, but still we've gotten the same line item from them. So I think it's going great.
Yeah, they've gotten to know us. We've gone in front of them for a management plan. We had to go in front of them and explain that, get them to adopt their management plan. Then we went in front of them with our emerald ash borer management plan as well. And they were very supportive of that. They know what we're doing with emerald ash borer. It is in Essex Junction, and we've been working on that for 5 years, heavily for 5 years. And we, after the planting this spring, we'll have planted around 90 trees to replace ash trees, and we've taken down about the same amount. And we're working, and they see that work. And Nick and I go out into the communities, we talk to the people. So we've had great relationships with village residents on emerald ash borer, mostly due to the tree committee. I don't think it would happen if it was just the town trying to do it. So we've been liaisons between the city and the public with that. And that a lot of that is knocking on doors and introducing yourself and telling them what's happening. And then they spread the word, so they know what's going on. So when we go up this spring and knock on doors, they already know what's going on, and we have had great success. No one has refused us to take a tree down. No one is told us, you can't come back and plant. They're all supportive, which is good. But again, it goes back to us as a volunteer group taking the time to go out and do that. And so anyway, the select board is well aware of what we're doing, and they support what we do. And we're thankful for that. So they have a great appreciation for trees in this community.
Yeah.
I'll
We're
say one
seeing
more-
oh yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Just one other thing. I want to again shout out to UCF because our whole approach of forming the committee working with you guys and developing the policies, the plans, the EAB management plans. I have to give so much credit for the assistance that you've given us. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Gwen?
I was just curious if Wendy could speak to her experience in Woodstock, because I think you're taking a little bit of a different approach with doing a conservancy rather than a committee. And I'm just curious what the relationship there is with the town since they don't have capacity. What is the relationship with folks? Because I feel like you have a little bit of a different experience.
Yeah, well, like I said, this is a new group. We've only been in existence for about 6 months. So we've been spending the 6 months reaching out to stakeholders, including the town, DPW, village trustees, select board, the schools, the local recreation department, we have Billings National Park here, users like the library, the chamber, Pentangle Arts, our Arts Council. The other nonprofits that take care of little pieces, like we have a new park on the East End, and that was developed by a group of residents. And then we have Faulkner Park at the base of Mount Tom that's kind of overseen by a friends group. So anyway, we've been talking to all these folks because our vision is that we will alleviate some of the burden to our town manager, who has to hear all these different groups coming to him and sort of represent all of them in a more cohesive, integrated way. But we're just at the beginning. So we've been meeting with the individual members of the select board and the trustees and our head of DPW, et cetera. But we only had our first official meeting for the record this week with the trustees. And of course, they'd all heard about it individually, and this was just a pro forma thing to get it on the record. And so, but the major step was that they approved our vision, our existence, and want us to proceed with the exploration of restoring the green and addressing the corridor traffic situation. We don't yet have our meeting with the select board, our official meeting with the select board. Hopefully that will also go well. Once that happens, the next step is to start talking to potential donors, because I was like looking at your population, and I was interested in Essex Junction, but you're like 3 times bigger than we are. And this is part of the problem, is that we're a very small community, but we have big dreams. And there are people, we believe, who are, second homeowners, or they, live up in the hills, and they care about our community and may be willing to, donate money, because our tax, is higher than a lot of our full-time residents can afford. So we really don't want to ask the town to increase their budget. So we're looking at grants, and then hopefully getting some philanthropic money, maybe establishing an endowment for maintenance. But that's the long-term big picture vision. If we can just even get the green in shape, at least, that will last another few decades. But ideally, we would actually develop an endowment for maintenance so that the town didn't have to do that.
Yeah, that's
So-
really an
Stay
interesting
tuned.
model. Yeah, yeah, stay tuned. All right, we've got about 10
I'm-
minutes left. I just want to give, let's see, there's a couple questions in the chat, and this was an area I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit too, Janice. Suggestions for recruiting members for your tree committee. Very like specifically, like, is it Front Porch Forum? Is it showing up at tabling at events? Is it like, how have you recruited people to be on your committee or group? Jane, Neil, and I mean,
Yes.
Neil, maybe we'll hear
Oh.
from you because you're just getting, I mean, you're trying to really build a program in Brandon. What has your experience been?
Painful. I called, I'm trying to remember the chronology. But we had, during the spring, we had a lot of people who were interested in the tree group. We called it the Brandon Tree Group. In the second meeting, we had 6, and the third meeting, we had 2. And recently, it's been me and one other person. So I'm not sure if that's because there's not the, I don't know what you call it, the cachet of excitement from going out and planting trees and pruning trees and being physical with the trees. But it's taken, and I've used Front Porch Forum and our local paper, The Reporter. And I get some excitement. I mean, I guess, and I think I need to take responsibility for all of this because I have very little volunteer help, other than my wife.
Thank you.
We had the Brandon Biggest Tree Contest, and we had an award ceremony, which was delightful, and I had no idea how many people would show up. I've had people come up to me on the street and ask about it, but only 10 people came to the ceremony. So I'm getting kind of frustrated with this whole process. People, and I realized that because we had a lapse in tree committee activity because of segment 6, which went on in Brandon for, my understanding is 15 years between planning and completion. Part of my job is to develop excitement about trees, which is what I'm trying to do. Not as tree warden, because it doesn't fit into the tree warden statutes, but it would fit into the shade tree preservation plan, I think, if we could ever get that passed or approved. It's slow. It is very, as I said, it's very frustrating to see the small amounts of progress, but at the same time, it's rewarding to see that there is some progress.
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at Nick and Warren, and I remember that 10 years ago when we were all trying to get the committee started. It's the consistency and the persistence and showing up and being showing that you're dedicated to kind of moving it forward, which is the difficult part of most of these tree programs being led by volunteers, that you're not being compensated for this work. It's a passion project for most of you on this call. So that that is the crux, and that's the hard part. Warren, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question for Wendy down in Woodstock, and that is, used to know the tree warden in Woodstock. I don't know if he's who you have for tree warden now,
Are you
and
thinking of
have
Don
you?
Wheeler?
Excuse me?
Don Wheeler?
Yes. Is
Mhm.
Don involved with anything you're doing down there?
Yeah, he's still the tree warden.
Yeah.
But
Is he
not the-
involved with what you're trying to do with the conservancy and that?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's aware of it, but we have not gotten to that point yet of actually doing anything yet. We're really just trying to establish ourselves and with the key stakeholders. We haven't even kind of gone out to the public except for this meeting with the trustees. So yeah, we have a whole list of people in various disciplines that when the time comes we'll kind of bring in. I'm here mostly just to learn about trees because I'm not a tree person and what all you are doing.
Got about
Thank you.
5 minutes left. Does anybody have another topic or specific question they'd like to pose to this group? Wendy.
Sorry, I have all these questions. So I was interested in some of you talking about various grants, and especially the ones that UFC is providing. But when I look at them, they're all for towns with, or they give priority to towns with like economic disadvantage or something like that. Is that right?
Well, no. I mean, historically, no. Our program has offered a grants program almost every year for the last 30 years. And historically, that it has not been geographically restricted. There have been times when we've made eligibility, based on a specific focus. The last couple years, our funding has been primarily supported by the Inflation Reduction Act, and that funding was very specifically directed at disadvantaged communities as defined by the USDA Forest Service. If you're following the news at all, those funds are frozen and may be crawled back by the new administration. So it's we are, in a pause mode right now. And to be completely frank, I do not know that we will have a grants program for the next 4 years.
Okay.
Our funds are severely at risk, I think. So we will also be looking for grants to continue our work. And, we have asked for state funding many times. We had a proposal in this year. It's just not a priority. And the only way for us as a state program to make that a priority is to encourage our audiences to be contacting their legislators, because we cannot do that. So that's my pitch for you all. That we're looking at a tough time ahead. But your base question, normally we do not restrict. Jane?
I wondered if, question for Warren about his ash trees that you said you had taken down so many. Were those all then within the right of way, so you didn't have to deal with the issues with tree removal and private people paying for it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Everything in Essex Junction is in the public right of way. All of these ash trees in our community have been planted either by developers or the city.
So the city took them down?
Yeah, not all of them. We've had a contractor do some of them that the city couldn't do, but the majority of them, the city has, the public works crews have removed. And it's because of the size, remembering that they were all planted. Most of them are probably not old, haven't been planted for more than 30 years.
Exactly.
Or less.
So $4,000 to take down a tree with a big double trunk is not it's not outlandish, it's typical.
If it's on the main street in Waterbury, which I know, and it's got utility lines and they've got to use a crane and there's traffic control, that's not out of the realm. All I would suggest, Jane, is get 3 or 4 bids.
Estimate. Okay.
Yeah,
the one with the one that needs a crane is 6,000. The other one is 4,250. Okay. I had another question about, in Norwich, in the chat, it says that the posting 6 detailed updates on Front Porch Forum was helpful in getting support. What kind of updates were they? Were they just letting people know that it was present and that the town was going to take down trees, or what kind of things did you put on your update? Because I think we need to do something like that.
Yeah, we'll let Doug answer that. All right, I'm gonna let Neil maybe be our final comment. I just want to respect people's time. It is almost 10 o'clock. This is recorded, and just before you go, Neil, I will let you all know, I will send the recording to everybody on this call, and you also, in that process, will have everyone's emails, and I might just indicate like a reminder of who's who from the towns. So if you do want to follow up on anything, you can do that. But Neil, we'll end with you.
I had one suggestion, which might not be news to anybody, but I've been hearing about a tree by the amidst power lines. And I think the power company, the utility, is one to ask to take it down because they would share the liability for that.
Yeah,
Um,
that was also a thought I had too, Neil.
Thank you.
You have to be careful with their scheduling though, because they plan regular trips to municipalities to clear the power lines. And if you're not on the schedule, you might have to wait a while. The other thing was, and I guess this is more for UCF personnel, even though you are very tied into the federal government, we're seeing rumors flying about left and right. Meals on Wheels is canceled. Meals on Wheels is not canceled. This is canceled. That's canceled. So just keeping real aware of the chaos that's coming out of Congress and the federal government. I would hate to be working under those situations. Do you have a job? Do you not have a job? You know, for the federal people, not for you guys.
Yeah.
And you know, that's my and my better half's contribution.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. It's wild times. Wild times. All right, well, with that, it is after 10, so we'll wrap up. I feel like this could be a regular type of opportunity. Maybe we'll do these a little bit more often, and just, you know, there's what, 10 towns represented on this call. We've got another 240. And I did get some emails from folks that had hoped that they could join. So I'll send the recording out. And yeah, if you're not on our tree mail listserv, we do send an e-newsletter out every other month, and that's the best way to stay up to date on what we're up to, any updates from the program. But I really appreciate everybody showing up this morning, and hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will, we'll be in touch with more opportunities. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for hosting. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
great day.
Before everybody goes, I'd like to point out that the back